Hey everyone, my name is Jacob and I'm an acquisitions manager with Full Circle Investment Group. As many of you know, our company is constantly looking for new ways to provide value to you guys as group members, and really to anyone who's looking to start their investment journey, as well as those who may already be experienced that are just simply looking to better themselves. So, one of the things that was brought up recently was the idea of sharing an actual phone call with a seller and doing a sort of call breakdown. So the goal behind this was to give you guys some insight into how we talk as acquisitions managers, specifically what we say, and more importantly, how we say it. There's a lot of psychology and science available today that directly supports some of the things that you will hear throughout this conversation. So I'm hoping that you'll pick up on some of that and that it will help you understand a little bit more about why these questions are asked the way they are and why they work and how they are received when the seller actually hears it phrased the way that it is. So by the end of this video, you'll understand that there are really 4 or 5 key pieces of information that you, as the investor, should be trying to gather on each initial phone call with a new seller. And additionally, you're going to hear, again, how some of those questions are asked and why they're asked the way they are. So before I start diving into that phone call, I would like to clarify a few things with you guys. So first off, this call breakdown is meant to serve as an example only. How I talk to sellers may be and probably is completely different than how you may talk to sellers. And that's great because we all have our own different styles. So the purpose of this is just to simply give you guys some insight into the particular pieces of information that you want to gather as the investor and how you can go about asking for that information. The key is to listen to this call, and if you pick up on anything that you like, as far as like maybe the way I asked a question or how I phrased something specifically, maybe what my tone was, anything along those lines, the key is to take that information and then try it out for yourself. Play with it a little bit before you actually get on the phone with the seller and see what sounds naturally coming out of your mouth. Because at the end of the day, being real with the seller is going to get you infinitely further than trying to maintain a script. Scripts, in my opinion, don't actually work. I think that scripts can be a good guideline, don't get me wrong, but scripts are meant to walk you down a very specific path, A to B to C to D to E. Well, what happens when you need to go from A to J? How do you make that jump, right? So, in my personal opinion, scripts are really just there to kind of give you an overall idea as far as what you should be trying to accomplish, what the goals are in any given call. And then it's up to you to really take that information and mold it into something that sounds natural and that really works for you. So that's the overall idea behind this conversation, is to really just give you some insight into maybe some of the things that I say, and if you can take some of that, play with it, and ultimately apply it to what you do moving forward with your conversations with the sellers, that's going to give you the best result moving forward, guys, I promise you. So, and at the end of the day, if you do that and you have your call rails set up correctly and you have your call recording on, then you'll be able to go back and listen to your own call recordings and critique yourself. I started doing that 2 years ago when I first got into this game, and I can't tell you what it has done for me over the last 2 years. The sheer ability to be able to go back and listen to myself and how I talk and critique myself has made all the difference in the world. So I highly encourage you guys to do that if you're not doing it already. So that's number one. Number two, I am by no means whatsoever an expert when it comes to acquisitions, guys. I've simply been doing this for 2 years. I am not perfect in any way whatsoever, and I personally guarantee you that there are going to be some points in this conversation that probably could have been handled a little differently and maybe even a little better. And that's okay because we're also constantly learning. On a daily basis, I listen to probably 3 or 4 different podcasts, or I read a chapter of a book that all has to do with either sales techniques, psychology, or some sort of acquisition. So I spend a lot of time doing this kind of stuff. But that being said, there's always ways to improve. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind moving forward. It's not going to be perfect, but again, the ultimate goal is just to give you some insight into how these conversations go so that you can ultimately try to apply it to what you're doing moving forward and hopefully generate a better result. So now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the call. So this is going to be a return phone call based on a cold call scenario for a probate lead, just to give you guys a little background.
Hello.
Hey, good afternoon, Ben. It's Jake McPherson giving you a call back.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I am the owner. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have the executor privilege or whatever on the house. My mother passed away, so it's up for me to sell it or do whatever I'm going to do.
Oh, okay. I got you. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Ben. I didn't realize that was the situation. So I guess that makes sense why you were listed. Okay. Yeah, I got to be honest. When I heard your I heard your voicemail there, I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to be lucky enough to get a call back. So thanks. I appreciate that.
Well, you left just the right amount of right information.
I got you. Okay. So yeah, long story short, Ben, I'm looking to buy various properties in the Hampton Roads area. So that's ultimately why I was trying to reach out, because I was just trying to figure out whether or not this was something you were looking to sell.
Yes, I am. I'm going to sell it. Excuse me. I'm going to sell it as is, or however the best deal. We'll get it. The house is paid for, so I'm in no hurry to just to liquidate. But I'm if I get the right numbers or a right number, then it's a done deal.
Sure, I got you. Okay. So I guess with that in mind, that it sounds like I don't know. I guess how up to date you are on everything as far as the market and stuff goes. Do you have like a rough idea as far as what houses are selling for, and versus what those conditions are, and kind of where you stand?
Yeah, the lady that I'm dealing with has given me all but the thing is that that yard is the largest yard in that whole subdivision.
Okay, guys, I'm going to hit pause here. We're just shy of being 2 minutes into this phone call, and you can kind of see how the conversation has started off, right? But basically, we've already identified a couple of key pieces of information that we would want to know, especially in a probate situation. We found out that Ben is the executor, which means that he does in fact have the authority to sell the property. We also found out that his mother was the one that passed away. And you guys heard me say there, I did say I apologize. I didn't realize that that was the situation. This goes back to having a heart, right? And being real with people over the phone, guys. These are personal situations, and they're not always easy. In fact, the majority of them are very hard, and they're affecting people emotionally. You need to tune into that, and you need to be aware of that as you're on the phone with these sellers, because if you come off sounding like a robot or you come off sounding cold, that seller's going to hang up on you before you even hear the sound, right? So just be aware of that as you move forward. You heard one other thing in here. I made a very personal touch on Ben's voicemail. Okay, so when I called Ben initially, his voicemail basically said that if I deem that you're important enough, I'll call you back. So it was a little bit of a punch to the face for anybody that was calling him, and it did actually make me laugh a little bit when I first got his voicemail. So I made it a point to bring that back up here, because that's a great way to take an opportunity for a personal touch right at the beginning of the call. So you hear all of these experts that put together these scripts and so on. They always talk about how important it is to build rapport with a seller over the phone. Well, that right there, what I had just did, was a great way to establish just a small, tiny, incremental amount of rapport, because I took the focus away from, hey, I'm calling about your house, to, hey, I thought this was funny. I thought that was great, right? So it just makes the conversation feel lighter, and it brings a more personal touch into it. And that's really important to build that kind of rapport over the phone. The other thing I did immediately is, within the first minute and a half, I already told Ben what my expectation was and what my involvement is in the sale. I told him right up front that I was ultimately looking at it from an investment standpoint, and that I was looking to purchase houses anywhere in Hampton Roads as is. So, and then he came back saying he is looking to sell as is. He said the house is also bought and paid for, so the house is free and clear, does not have a mortgage. And he also said he's not really interested in selling, super fast, but at the same time, if he gets his number, then it's a done deal, right? So as we can see thus far, just in the first 2 minutes of this conversation, this is definitely something that we want to continue down. So I think the last question that you heard, I was basically asking him, since he had brought up the idea of, well, if I get the right number, then it's a done deal. Well, that's a good opportunity to just simply ask him, okay, well, totally get it, right? So moving forward, do you know at this time what houses in the neighborhood like yours are selling for? Because now we're starting to establish how much research he's done and ultimately where he's at, okay? And you did hear him say that the girl that I'm working with, okay, so there's obviously somebody else involved. We don't know who that is yet, but we can find that out as we go.
And
okay. Okay.
so yeah, it was the very first house built in that area by the developers, and my dad ended up buying the model. So he got it in 1960. It's been one owner, one family house. Yep.
Okay. Jeez. Okay. I'm sorry. Keep going. Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, no, I don't know what else to say. It's an older house.
So that right there, guys, keep going. I'm listening, right? That's just keeping the seller talking. You want to keep the seller engaged, and the more information, the longer you can keep them talking, the smoother, the better the conversation is going to go. Because ultimately, I want to get as much information from him as possible so that I can fully understand what the situation is and whether or not I can actually help him out. So that's just a phrase that I use, one of the phrases that I use to continue keeping the seller talking.
And I'm not so sure that somebody will bulldoze it and then build, because it seems like everything else going up in that area is much bigger and much better.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of interesting then.
You'll see if you're in that area, a lot of people have gone 2 stories and beyond. I mean, it's interesting to see the whole life cycle of that little area. I grew up there.
I got you. Okay. Yeah, I mean, as far as the market goes, it's kind of interesting with all this coronavirus stuff going on because it seems like a lot of the builders are kind of pulling back. But I see what you mean here. I mean, it looks like this is pretty small. It's 3-bedroom, 1 bath, less than 1,000 square feet. So, I mean, yeah, you're probably right. I think it, just based on current market conditions and then how everything's moving forward, I would agree with you that a new build is probably going to be the way to go.
Okay, guys, so a couple of things here, right? The seller himself just brought up that this was a new construction in his mind because of the fact that so many other houses are being built in that neighborhood. When I was online looking at the research, looking at the neighborhood, that was actually true, right? Which is why I'm starting to share some of the information I am. In the background on all of this, guys, if you are at your desk, you have the opportunity to pull up the public records, whether or not that's through the county offices online, or if you do actually have access to Zillow, right, to RAIN, the MLS here in Hampton Roads. If you have access to any of that and you have the opportunity to pull that up while you're on the phone, I highly suggest that you do that because that's another great opportunity to basically test the information that the seller is giving you, right? So in this case, I am in agreement. It does seem like new construction is probably the way to go, but you'll see here I also put in a little bit of a seed of doubt, right? Because I basically said, yeah, I agree with you, right? But then I brought up everything that's going on with coronavirus. So yes, normally I would agree with you, especially if the market is hot. There is a lot of building going on. But that being said, there are a lot of people that are pulling back right now. That's not an untrue statement. So what that does is it kind of gets him thinking a little bit more as far as like, oh shoot, that's a good point, right? So just starting to slowly but surely check the seller on their information and make sure that they understand what the market is. That's bringing a level of realism into the conversation so that this guy isn't just up in the clouds, because a lot of sellers, when you first talk to them, their head's definitely up in the clouds. So this is just making sure that as we progress here, we're keeping the conversation real. Okay?
Because, I mean, most people just, anything 1,000 feet and less nowadays, most people just don't even bother looking at them because it's small,
Yeah, it's a deceiving 1,000 feet because it's got my dad did some extra work, and so I mean he built the garage into a den, and then he built the kitchen bigger, and I don't think that's even on the property deed or whatever, but
okay.
Yeah, so it's got a backyard garage, but the garage is old, but I was told I had a home inspection on it, and I was told that the garage really isn't in that bad a shape. there's some dog pens that used to have hunting dogs that would definitely be tore down before, you know. But that's minor stuff. You know.
Yeah, I got you.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So I guess, do you mind, I mean, I assume that this is an okay time to talk based on the amount of time that we've already been on the phone, but is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions about the current condition of what?
Okay, guys, so right here, I'm asking for permission to continue the conversation, right? Usually I actually try to do this more towards the beginning of the phone call. Usually right when I get on the phone with the seller, I ask, is it an okay time to talk or is it a bad time to talk? And give them the opportunity to say no. There is some psychology behind that, and that's why we ask that question, because it basically gives the seller the power and the ability to say no if they want to. The psychology behind that is that it actually it just makes the conversation that much easier, because ultimately you're asking them their permission to proceed with the conversation. And if they're okay with it, then anything that you talk about from that point on is obviously going to be okay. So that's kind of the idea behind asking that question, which is why I ask him specifically, hey, would you mind if I asked you a couple of questions about the condition of the property? And of course, you hear him say immediately, yep, that's fine. So I didn't ask him if it was a bad time to talk or if it was okay to talk initially, because this was already me returning his phone call based on a voicemail that he had just left me. So the assumption there, of course, was that, yes, it's an okay time to talk since he already tried to call me once. But then again, you know, that's a great question to ask, regardless of whether or not it's, you know, 4.5 minutes into the conversation or if it's 30 seconds into the conversation. So keep that in mind.
There?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like at the end of the day here, all I'm trying to do, Ben, I'm just trying to get like a rough idea, right, of what condition the property is in. Because that's, I mean, essentially that's how we come up with our offers, right? I got to be able to work backwards based on market value and then try to figure out what I got to put into it.
Yeah.
And then just kind of go from there. So I guess starting from the outside in, and it's okay if you don't know some of the answers to the questions. Yeah. Let me just preface it with that.
All right.
But just start from the outside in. I kind of want to do like a virtual walkthrough. So can you tell me how old the roof is, or do you have any idea?
Okay, guys, so right there, a couple of different things happened. I had, again, basically set the expectation. I told him what information I was looking for, and I told him why it was important for me to know that information. And then I kept the conversation light by saying things like, hey, it's totally okay if you don't know some of the answers to these questions, right? I'm just trying to get an overall general perspective on it so that I can ultimately understand roughly where we're at and whether or not it makes sense to continue the conversation. Is that okay? Right? That's the basic idea behind what I just did there. And now, as you can see, now we're getting into the actual condition of the property, and this is one of those key pieces of information that, of course, we always want to try to gather in every initial phone call with the seller. Because understanding the condition, again, is going to help us get to our offer over the phone so that we can try to pre-qualify whether or not it's actually worth going on a property walkthrough.
Now, the roof is, I would say, I don't know, it's not very old. Because the heater, the air pump, and the air conditioner have all been replaced within, I think, 5 or 6 years. New water heater. Let's see. The best thing is if you'll want to meet me there sometimes. I live less than a mile away from that house.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see you're in Suffolk, so that's a drive.
Actually, I'm closer than that. So, so I'm actually over in I'm in Greenbrier area for the most part, Kempsville, actually.
Oh yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not too far off there, at all. It's what you guys are just off of in between Rosemont and Lynnhaven, right? So.
Yeah. If you get off at Rosemont, or you could get off at Lynnhaven and then go Lynnhaven north, and then when you cross over the railroad tracks, it's on the left-hand side of the area.
I got you. Yeah. So that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, you're 15 minutes away from me. So, okay. Yeah, I guess before I go ahead and set up a walkthrough with you, because, time is limited for me, I'd just kind of like to see whether or not we're going to be close before I actually make the trip. Because I don't want to waste your time, and, obviously I don't really want to
I appreciate that greatly. Yeah.
Okay, guys, so you just heard that, right? A lot of sellers, when they start going down when you start asking questions about the condition of the property, I probably get this, I don't know, maybe at least 50% of the time on the phone if I had to throw a number at it, where a seller will start telling me what the condition of the property is, and then for whatever reason they'll stop and they'll say, well, why don't you just come out and look at it? Okay, well, Mr. Seller, that's all well and good, right? But before I go and do that and actually spend my time doing that, I'd like to try to figure out whether or not we're even close on this, because the last thing I want to do is waste your time, and I definitely don't want to waste mine, right? So that's just going back to being real with people, right? It's okay to say those types of things and set that expectation, guys. You don't have to go on every single property walkthrough just because the seller wants to get you out there. And most of the ones that are actually reasonable, that are going to turn out to be a sale, they're going to be completely okay with what I just said, right? And you heard Ben take it. He said, I really respect that. I appreciate that, right? Because he knows as well. That's a real thing. Okay, we don't always have time. Time is limited. So be okay saying those types of things and setting that expectation and being confident with what you're talking about and where you want to spend your time. It's going to ultimately give you a better result at the end of the day. If you get guys that are pushing you to come out to a property, I would bet you right now 9 times out of 10 that that's something that you don't even want to look at anyway. There have been very, very few, really few times that I've gone out to a seller that's been like, no, man, just come out and look at it. Well, obviously that guy, just based on his tone, doesn't really care to work with you anyway. So why would you want to go and spend your time and do something like that? So just know that moving forward, guys, this is completely okay to say stuff like this. This is just being real.
Yeah, yeah. So new hot water heater. You said the HVAC is only 5-6 years old. You're thinking the roof is probably on the same level as that. Any issues with siding, foundation, like in general? Anything that stands out?
Siding is good. Yeah, siding was good, inspected good. But I'm one of those that the house is 60 years old. Let's see, it was 60, it's 40 and 20. So and
literally almost.
It's got. I don't want to put money in it. I just rather somebody come in and realize what they got and go from there. But like I said, the house is totally paid for, and it's just the only thing I'm paying now is real estate tax, and that's it. So
okay.
I'm in. Yeah. What do you? Give me a number. Yell the numbers out.
Yeah, so I'm actually while we've been talking here, I've been pulling up some comps in the area because
So real quick, guys, so we're starting to get to the point where I really didn't dive the condition of the property as much as I probably would typically want to, right? We only got to the roof, the HVAC, and the hot water heater, and I found out that the siding and the foundation are somewhat okay. We didn't really talk about anything on the internal side of the house. And the reason I didn't go back to any of that is because he already starts to continue going down the path of, hey, I really just don't want to put any more money into this thing. It's 60 years old. So he's telling you that it's an old property, right? It sounds like it needs work in general. Okay, there's really no reason to continue down the path of trying to figure out what the other conditions are as far as the kitchen, the baths, the windows. We can do all that if we actually get to a property walkthrough. The idea when you talk about condition is just to kind of get a general assessment in your mind to figure out whether or not it's actually worth it to go on the property walkthrough. But in this case, since he already started to take that conversation down another path, he already understands that it's probably going to be a teardown and a new construction. I didn't see any reason to continue going down the path of, well, hold on, let's go back to kitchen, let's go back to bath, right? Because that's, in my opinion, that's when you start to try to follow the script, and that's when you start to sound robotic. Okay, this is one of those perfect examples when we just went from B to U, right? And now I'm starting to have that talk on numbers, which is perfectly fine. You're going to have to adjust as you encounter some of these scenarios in these types of conversations, right? You're not always going to have the perfect call, and that's why I go ahead and I make the adjustment here just based on the information that's currently available. So just know that.
I agree with you. I think we're going to have to look at it from a new construction. And I do work with multiple partners that do this, so that's not really a concern for me moving forward. It looks like majority of houses new construction are selling for somewhere along the lines of like $390. That's literally costs all in, right? That's what the final sales cost is. So Let me just see real quick. I'm going to try to work backwards with you over the phone and just kind of see what we can do to ballpark here.
Yeah.
So if I figure, where the hell is my calculator at? I'm sorry, Ben. My computer's slower than death today, man. All right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times right here, guys, you can start to hear that there's some emptiness as far as the call is concerned. Personally, I don't like the silence that happens. I feel like sometimes it can make these conversations come to an awkward type of moment. So I usually try to fill the gap and try to break the silence if I can. When you come to these types of situations, this is a great opportunity and a great point for you to continue trying to look up the information that you're looking for, which is what I'm doing, and at the same time start asking some more personal questions about the seller. Ask them about their day, ask them about their week, things along those lines. And you'll hear me do that in the next few minutes here, and that's just continuing to build rapport throughout the conversation.
How's everything going for you with this whole coronavirus and all that fun stuff?
Well, I'm home getting paid. I don't see it. You can't get much better than
that. Hey, there you go. They haven't cut your legs out from under you yet, huh?
Oh, not yet. No, it's an election year. We're safe until November.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of curious. My wife is she works in the medical field, so she doesn't really get a choice. She's been going in every day.
Yeah.
And thankfully I'm able to work from home. But go ahead.
Yeah, one of my daughters is a nurse practitioner, and she's out there on the as you drive through to get your tests done and stuff. So that's the one I'm worried about.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, it's scary.
Yeah.
You just don't know right now. So it looks
like you don't. And
go ahead.
No, it is. But I mean, the most thing I'm concerned about is you got Americans. They don't follow orders very well. Everybody's bulletproof, and the young ones. I just had a granddaughter come back from Miami and didn't know what the big deal was about. So, but they live in a different world, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's interesting to see, the number of people that are taking it seriously, and then the number of people that think it's a joke. And I don't know. I can't make heads or tails of it. I've been trying to get my information directly from the WHO and the CDC, and not really listening to a lot of the news outlets, other than, of course, just following, any of the local standards that are being put into play. But outside of that, I mean, good God.
Yeah. Well, it's I'm a history major, and in 1919 they had it's called the Spanish flu, and over 100 million people died from that one.
Wow, good God. So where does that rank up there with where's that rank with like bubonic plague and so on?
Well, that's that was back in the days when it just ran its course, and I don't know if they knew what it was or what to do, and then I guess it probably sometimes weather will help you out. I was under the understanding that this should have a result of to warm temperatures and moisture will do that virus harm, but we'll see.
Okay. See, so you're talking about the COVID-19, or are you talking about the Spanish flu and the bubonic plague?
The bubonic plague, I mean, the plague and all that's history, but this is the one that's going to make history. But some of the scientists are saying that if it has the characteristics of a flu virus, is that inherently you don't see many people with the flu in summer.
Right. I got you. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, because literally earlier today, I started researching the WHO's website, and they were saying that in this particular case, they have no reason to believe whether or not temperature actually factors in at this point, but that's just based on probably not having enough data at this point. But
you're exactly right. This is history's will write the book, but I mean, you hear this and you hear that. But I'm 72 years old, so I'm not in a position to challenge them on their threats. So
yeah. Jeez. Oh my God. So how does that affect you then? So you've probably really been staying indoors for the most part.
I've been working in my yard, putzing around.
Yeah.
I'm a school teacher, so I went in there for a while today, and then just came on back home. They were passing out meals to the kids, and of course, all of a sudden, everybody in the world's got 15 kids.
Yeah, yeah, kind of interesting how that kind of plays out, huh?
Yeah, because they're not challenging. When people pull up and say, "I got 4 kids," they just give them 4 bags, and you could say you have 10 kids, and it's
Wow.
I don't know. It's accountability. There is no accountability. So.
Yeah, well, and that's almost scary too, because at the end of the day, I don't know who's going to be covering all the costs of this, but yeah.
You know who's going to do it. I'm talking to one of them. He's talking to the other one. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm trying not to.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it was just like on this house and everything. Uncle Sam got his portion of the pie before I got anything, from bank accounts and what have you.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah. So I got so I did actually get this calculator pulled up here, Ben, and I'm thinking that
All right, guys. So that entire conversation right there that you just heard, that was nothing but straight, sheer rapport building, right? I was in the process of looking up all my information as far as what houses we're selling for so that Ben and I could have that conversation. And before I get there, I basically start asking him about himself and how he's handling everything with the COVID-19 stuff, because that's something that everybody can relate to right now in this time. So just a really great opportunity to build rapport with the seller. And he tossed out a bunch of personal information there, right? He said that his daughter is a nurse practitioner and she's on the front lines. He said that he was a history major, and we started talking about the Spanish flu and the bubonic plague and how that played out way back when and so on. And he said that he was a school teacher. He said he was 72 years old. Those are all things that you want to key in on, because that's all key information, right? That's trying to figure out who this person is and how you can continue to build that relationship with them. And you're starting to listen in on some things that may be important to him. So those are all really, really great pieces of conversation. So I hope that you guys can understand where I was going with that, why I was trying to go down that road, right? Because now when we go back to the numbers conversation, now we've already made the conversation light and airy, and everybody's comfortable, and we're laughing and we're connecting. So when we're about to have the conversation on numbers, it's going to be that much easier to have, right? And that's the purpose of going down that path and building rapport.
So with the fact that houses are selling for $390, factoring all my costs and everything, I'm probably going to be starting somewhere along the lines of like 75,000.
One note about that 70 to 75,000. In all reality, guys, I know that I need to buy probably closer to 100. The reason I say 775, of course, is price anchoring. We always want to price anchor. I'm trying to throw out a lower number over the phone just to try to feel out the seller and see where he's at. And ultimately, how he responds to that is going to determine where we take the conversation next, right? So just keep that in mind. The actual buy price on this right now, based on the research, is somewhere between 90 and 100,000 with a wholesale fee. And I'm tossing out 70 to 75,000 over the phone to feel out the seller and set the price point.
That would be free and clear. Cash sale, right? So.
Yeah, the property's worth 91,000. I was told.
Oh, who told you that?
The realtor that I'm dealing with. I think, let's see, what's her name? I've got it. I can't bring it up because it's on the phone. But the lot is that big, and it faces the Lynn Haven contributory, which is watershed and all that stuff. So nobody can build behind you, and nobody lives close to you on the left-hand side. So that's what I'm saying. If I don't get what I'm looking for, I'll just sit on it, and then one day it ain't going to go sour.
Right. Are we in a flood zone here? Because initially I was thinking we were in a flood zone. Are we not?
In 60 years, that house, no matter what storm, what hurricane, that water never got near that house.
Yeah. See, so you are halfway in the AE though.
Yeah.
And that's where the concern is, because I mean, and I'm sure you're aware of it, but if they do classify you as a flood zone, it affects the buyer on the back end, and that's where the risk is. Yeah, and formally you are listed as AE flood zone. But let's do this though. I mean, if you're saying you're at 90, 91 or so, if that's what the realtor's telling you, and I'm only at 75, I mean, we're not that far off. So maybe there's maybe I can crunch the numbers, because this is all kind of over the phone, and there are some other factors in here that I'm considering. So, I mean, being as close as we are, why don't we just go ahead and why don't we set up a walkthrough and just let me come in and see what we're actually talking about here, and then I'll be able to give you a firm number. Would that work for you?
Okay, so see how I phrased the question there, guys? I'm basically keeping it light again, right? Not really pressing too hard, just saying, well, hey, we're not that far off, right? I mean, you're at 90, 91, I'm at 70, 75. Like, maybe we can make something work after I get over there and I actually take a look at what we have, and we can just kind of go from there. Would that work for you? Again, I'm asking for permission to proceed with this transaction, relationship, whatever you want to call it, right? It always goes back to asking the seller for permission. It gives them the power and gives them the authority and the ability to say no, which ultimately, from a psychological standpoint, makes people feel more comfortable with you. So that's why we do that. That's why we continue to ask for permission. You also heard him say a couple different times, right? Well, nobody can build behind you because there's the zone back there that doesn't allow anybody to build, right? So, and then I immediately said, well, yeah, that may be true, but you're also in a flood zone, right? So this is kind of where we're starting to go back and forth, and we're both trying to attempt to justify why what we said makes sense, right? So he's trying to tell me why 9091 makes sense. Well, because it's a great property, right? Yeah, I get that, Mr. Seller, but you're also in a flood zone, which means that the end buyer, when they go to purchase the home after I'm done with it, is going to have to pay flood insurance. So that's going to be a major factor on this particular sale, and that's one of the reasons why I'm still lower than 90, right? That's ultimately what I'm getting at, and that's ultimately what he's getting at. So saying little tiny things, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, when I started to pepper in a little bit of doubt on the new construction side and people wanting to pull back from the market because of everything that's going on with COVID-19, same exact thing here. You're trying to lower the seller's expectations over the phone to keep the conversation real. All that is it's just a reality check, and it's legitimate because nothing that I'm saying is incorrect. Nothing that he's saying is incorrect either, but it's just trying to get the seller to come down to your number at the end of the day. And then you can see here, like I said, we're not that far off, guys, right? So the rule of thumb that we usually go with is that if you're talking about numbers with a seller over the phone and you're, let's call it, within $30,000, $40,000 worth of being at your number, those are usually appointments that we personally actually try to set up. The idea there is that usually if I can get within $30,000 over the phone, if I go and actually talk to them in person and take the time to build rapport even further and walk the property with them and really try to figure out where things are at, usually we can get the seller to come down, let's call it another 10, 20,000, maybe all the way to our number, right? So it may not work out, but the numbers are close enough where I would say it actually warrants a property walkthrough so that you can confirm whether or not it actually will work out or it won't. So that's usually the golden rule for us. Somewhere between 30,000 and 40,000 over the phone would justify a property walkthrough. You can see here that Ben and we're within $15,000 of each other, and I haven't even looked at the property yet, so we're pretty close. He did say a couple of things, though. He said that he is working with a realtor. Of course, from a wholesaling perspective, we typically try to steer away from realtors. But that being said, obviously he feels comfortable working with her. If that's the case, then I don't want to affect or offend that relationship in any way whatsoever. So if it takes us working with a realtor to get this done, then sure, we're willing to have that conversation. But that is something that we want to note, because obviously that's going to have to be something that is brought up at a later date to figure out how all of that is going to work. Okay, so just keep that in mind as well, because that is important. So the rest of this, I'm just going to let it play out right until the end, guys. This is just me setting up the property walkthrough with Ben. You can hear how that goes, and then I'll recap a couple of things when we're done, and that'll be it for today. So enjoy the rest of this.
Yeah, you're going to have to come up with another whole new digit, but I mean, I'll be glad to work, show you what it is, and I'm not fluffing anything. You can see, you can look, do whatever you want, but that'll,
Okay.
I just don't know what.
Sure, I got you. Yeah, at the end of the day, Ben, I want to let you know. So I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. So I'm a numbers kind of guy. I'm super transparent, right? At the end of the day, if it works out for me, great. But if it doesn't, that's fine too. right? To be honest with you, I think 9 out of 10 people that I see, it's not really a deal for the two of us, because we just can't mutually come to the same number. But
Yeah.
one out of 10 it does, and those are the ones that I try to work with. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, at least we'll know, right?
All right.
So, and then you'll have a better idea where I'm at, and probably where most investors are going to be. Obviously, we all kind of vary just a little bit depending on the cost of money and so on. But for the most part, we're all pretty much the same. But yeah, so I guess with that in mind, what's a good day to get up with you here?
Sometime Saturday.
There's a possibility that I will be up in Fredericksburg this weekend.
Right.
That's where my wife's family is. Would it be, could we maybe do, actually I could do tomorrow, or I could do just about any day next week.
What time tomorrow?
I can do, any time in the morning, or we can shoot for, really any time after 2 o'clock.
All right. So let's make it 2:30.
That sounds good. Yeah, 2:30 tomorrow.
All right. Yep.
All right. Sounds like a plan. I'll bring my Purell, and I'll plan to see you tomorrow at 2:30.
All right. 2:30 tomorrow. I'll see you, Jacob.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks very much, Ben. I hope you have a good day. Be safe.
Thank you, sir. And I'll see you. Bye.
All right. All right. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that's it for the call, guys. Overall, I hope that you guys were able to, to take some value away from that. I hope that the explanation and the breakdown as far as what I was saying, why I was saying it, and so on, I hope all of that is helpful to you. I hope you guys are able to take some of that moving forward and actually apply it and play with it, and hopefully have it generate some new results. If any of you do go and try this stuff, I would love to hear any feedback that you have regarding the conversations that you have with sellers and how all of this has helped you and worked for you, if it has. Just really looking forward to hearing, any feedback on this as far as whether or not you guys think it's helpful. So I would really appreciate that in the comments section if you could leave that. Outside of that, a couple of things to go over at the end there, right? So goes back to giving the seller the ability to say no, right? I basically kept it light. I said, hey, Ben, at the end of the day, like nine out of 10 don't really work out, and that's okay, right? But at least we'll know. So is that okay, right? So I'm still asking for permission to go on the property walkthrough, and I'm really just making sure that he's okay with that. And I'm setting the expectation up front to let him know that, hey, it's totally okay if this doesn't work out, right? But at the end of the day, at least we'll know. So that'll be helpful to you. That'll be helpful to me. You'll understand where we're at, and then you can ultimately figure out what's best for you, right? So giving the seller the power and the ability to continue to say no or say yes and agree to moving forward with the relationship that you've already set, right? That's ultimately what you're trying to do there. So, guys, I'm going to go over real quick the several things that you want to make sure that you gather over the phone. And if you go back and listen to it here, honestly, I wasn't paying attention as far as whether or not I touched on them all. But there are 4 key things. So the first thing is you want to understand why the seller is actually trying to sell. What is the reason that they're trying to unload the property? Okay, so number 1 is why. Number 2 is condition, right? I need to understand a little bit about the property to try to pre-qualify it over the phone to see if it even makes sense for me to even go on a property walkthrough and figure out whether or not the deal is actually a deal, right? So number 2 is property condition. Okay, condition. Number 3, I usually try to establish some sort of time frame as far as when they are looking to sell. In this case, Ben said right at the beginning of the call that he's not really in a hurry, right? The property's owned free and clear, so he doesn't really care that much, but it still goes back to, well, but I ultimately am looking to sell, right? So, and as we found out throughout the course of that conversation, it did definitely warrant setting up a property walkthrough, especially since we're only $15,000 off. So number 3 is time frame. Okay. And then number 4 is who else is involved in this particular conversation or in this sale? Is there anybody that this sale is going to affect outside of you? I didn't actually ask Ben that question, if I remember correctly, in this conversation, but that's usually something that I try to bring up if the conversation allows for it. So number 4 is, who else is involved? Okay, because it could be, especially in the case of probate, right? Ben said that he's the executor and that he has the authority to sell, but are there other people that are still listed as heirs that this is ultimately going to affect? I don't know, right? So those are questions that you definitely want to know. Of course, in the case of Ben being the executor, we do know that ultimately it is his decision, but is he going to run that decision by anybody else, right? Does he have a wife in play that's going to ultimately try to steer his decision, right? Does he have friends or families? In this case, the realtor. So the realtor could actually affect whether or not Ben chooses to continue to work with me or continues to work with somebody else. The realtor is definitely going to be not a decision maker, but she's going to be a key influencer in this particular case, right? So that's the information that you want to try to gather when it comes to who else is involved. So who else, aside from yourself as the decision maker, is either another decision maker or is a key influencer? That's another really good piece of information to have. So we've got the why, we've got the condition, we've got the time frame, and then we've got who else is involved. There's always a couple other pieces, guys, that are important outside of that, but I would say those are your top 4. There is actually number 5. Number 5, of course. I don't know how I managed to forget this one. But number 5 is what's the number, right? What does the seller ultimately want to let the property go for? What are they trying to get? Because if you're a wholesaler and your offer is $60,000 and the seller says that they don't want to sell for less than 170, well, that sounds like a retail sale, right? So the chances of you getting a seller to come down from 170 to 60 are, let's call it, just slim to none, right? So that conversation may be a waste of your time from that point on. So number 5 is, what number are they looking to get as far as the purchase price or the sale price is concerned? So those are the top 5 pieces of information that you guys want to gather on each individual call. Outside of that, that's really all I have for you today, guys. I hope that this conversation was helpful for you, and I really hope that you're able to take some of this information and run with it. And again, please provide feedback. If you guys do go and you try any of this stuff, please let me know what the results are and how that works out for you, because I'm definitely interested and definitely curious to see who else is being successful with using these types of techniques. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in. We're just shy of our 50-minute to an hour mark, so we're good to go there. I appreciate it. I wish you guys the best of luck, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.